Okay, hello and welcome to week 10. Let's take a quick tour of the to-do list for week 10. So first up, you've got a logic quiz. Then we're introducing a new module in Unit 3, Statistics. And we are beginning a new module in Unit 4 on informal fallacies. If we skip down to the sort of calendar list of modules at the bottom, you can see week 10 down here. I'm going to post, in addition to the logic quiz, practice quiz. So if you check out here, as usual, there's a practice quiz with solutions. There's also a guided review that'll walk you through reviewing what's on the quiz. And I'm also going to post a video of me taking the practice quiz and thinking out loud as I do. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to put it in the logic quiz materials. I'm also going to put it on the home page. And let's take a look at the two new modules. So just to review, the focus of Unit 3 is looking at arguments about statistics, about probability, and about causation. So we're reasoning about probability, statistics, and causation. We're going to use our skills from Unit 1, understanding arguments, to identify and reconstruct arguments in standard form. And we're going to look at sort of forms or patterns of reasoning about these three major areas so we can at least know what the standards for a strong argument that draws a conclusion about statistics, probability, and causation are. We're also going to focus on common errors in reasoning about these three topics. And in general, informal fallacies are errors in reasoning. So the common errors in reasoning about statistics, probability, and causation will also be three of our informal fallacies that we'll look at. So just like when it came to cognitive biases, we looked at 8 of them to practice with. We're similarly going to look at 8 informal fallacies. There are hundreds that are interesting to look at, but we're just going to look at 8. Our goal isn't to learn how to spot these 8 particular fallacies, but how to engage in argument analysis and evaluation, looking for errors in reasoning. Let's start with the statistics module. So we're going to be working on this module for 2 weeks. And as usual, I've put advice and a timeline, what we're going to focus on each week. So for week 10, we're just getting used to the new terminology, and we're going to look at the pattern of reasoning to make a strong argument about that draws basically a statistical generalization. So we'll just look at the first half of the text, pages 1 through 8, and you should definitely do a couple practice exercises from the worksheet in addition to completing the homework. Next week, in week 11, we're going to do the same stuff, but we're going to go further in evaluating the arguments after we have been able to reconstruct them in standard form as a strong argument. And again, in addition to the homework, you should do practice exercises. And let's go to our new module for informal fallacies. As usual, there's a description, there are learning objectives, and a guide. We're going to be working on this material for 6 weeks, including the week with the quiz. So for this first week, we're introducing the big idea. There are 2 parts to the text, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 introduces the big idea, sort of shows us where we're going with all of this, and we focus in on comparing and contrasting, evaluating arguments, why these are called informal fallacies, compared to, say, in Unit 2, how we are evaluating arguments there. We might, so we draw a distinction between formal and informal fallacies, and we just practice the process of evaluating arguments, and we focus on 2 to 3 informal fallacies. The next bit of the text is an overview of our 8 informal fallacies. And we'll go through that bit of the text in the following week. So week 10 is big idea. Next week, call that memorization week. Your goal is to just go through the second part, which goes over the 8 informal fallacies we're looking at, and you don't have to read any of the sections in great detail. Just get a sense of what the fallacy is and look at the sample examples of arguments that commit the various informal fallacies. And your homework will be on that, where our goal is just to get the definitions down and be able to identify some really simple examples of each definition. And then in weeks 12 through 14, we'll go into more detail with a focus on argument analysis. So you'll have passages that you'll distill arguments from, put them in standard form, and evaluate them. And each week we'll add new fallacies to the list. So week 12, we introduced equivocation, ad populum, and ad hominem, 3 fallacies in week 10, and we're going to add to that 1 new fallacy in week 12. So we'll focus on 4. In week 13, we're going to add 2 new fallacies to the list, and in week 14, we'll add 2 more, where we're going to be doing short answer, passage analysis, and evaluation kinds of questions. And then in week 15, you'll review and take the quiz. So the strategy is to, do your best with the material for this week. Focus on skimming and memorizing in the gist the next week, and then in more detail, really focus on being able to extract arguments from passages, put them in standard form, and carefully evaluate them. There are 2 passage analysis guides. I recommend looking at these. If not this week, maybe in week 12 when we get into the passage analysis stuff. There's a YouTube videos page and playlist. These are essentially the same things. And there are flashcards with definitions, and there are flashcards with sample exercises. The first one is relevant to week 10, this coming week, because they are all ad populum and ad hominem. It'll also be relevant when we get to, as I said before, week 12. In addition to ad populum and ad hominem, we're going to add straw person. Right, so these are the first set that you might use to practice with, ad populum and ad hominem, and then there are 2 more sets of mixed practice, so all 8 fallacies are in the mixed practice sets. Okay, and that is our week. Good luck in week 10.